Hi there, I'm Mary Susie, and today I'm going to show you how to make this alternating rings bracelet. This is a really simple chain to make, and if we were making it all in one color, then it'd be extremely easy to do. And I'd put this in the first time beginner category, but we're going to add some additional elements. We're going to be alternating our colors that pass through the beads, and then we're going to be alternating the colors along the length of the bracelet too. So that's going to make it a little bit more complex, but I think a lot more interesting project. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so when selecting materials for this project, the main thing you want to do is find a bead where two jump rings can pass through it. And once you have that, then you'll be successful with this. But that was our main criteria in selecting a bead to use. And these are just little antique copper pewter beads. So I'm going to take my first jump ring, which is one of the shiny green jump rings. And I'm going to be using shiny green in every row. But then the matte colors that I'm using, I'm going to be alternating them in each row. So we're going to go, here, let me put these in the correct order. We're going to go seafoam, blue, and titanium. So these are just matte colors. So matte seafoam, matte blue, and matte titanium gray. Okay, so I'm just going to pick up two. We're starting our first row, and I'm going to close this jump ring. Okay, and then I'm going to take my first color, my seafoam, and I'm going to pass it through just one of these beads. So the reason I named this alternating rings in the first place was because I pass through one of the beads in each row, and there's two, and I don't pass through the other one. Okay, so now you see that I just folded that in half. And the first thing I want to do to get this started, in order to keep my rings in place in the first place, I want to go ahead and use this smaller jump ring, and I'm going to go ahead and attach the clasp right off the bat. That way, this first row that I established is not going to be able to move around, so it's not going to change which side I put things on. And that's going to be an important part of it, is which side has the hinge, which would be this side where both pass through, and then you can see this side could actually open because it's not hinged. Okay, so starting row 2, I'm going to pick up a bead. I am going to pass through both of the jump rings, but you see I'm between the beads. I'm passing through both the jump rings from the previous row. I'm going to pick up a second bead, and then I'm going to close. Okay, so I have one row. Now, the second row, when you're creating a chain, you know, if the first row is laying on the horizontal, then the next row is laying on the vertical. So it's, you know, one's facing you and one's facing side by side. So I want you to keep that in mind as we go through, because we're going to be concerned with rows 1 and 3 matching each other, and then we're going to be concerned with row 2 and 4 matching each other. So right now, we don't need to worry about which side our hinge is going to be on. So I can just pass through either one of these beads that I want to. Okay, I'm going to pass through the pair that was in front of it, and I'm going to close this jump ring. I can use the back side of my bent nose pliers for this project because these jump rings are very large, especially compared to what I'm used to working with. Okay, so now you see the hinge is on this side. You can't see the hinge of this one, so this is where my loose bead sits. Now, we've gone ahead and finished the first pair. So now it's not going to be my shiny rings that get the bead. For the next 2 rows, it's going to be my matte beads, or I'm sorry, my matte jump rings to get the beads. Okay, so I can go ahead and set those out for myself. And then the secondary ring that's going to be added in these rows is going to be the shiny one. Okay, so we're alternating. We did shiny, shiny to start the row. Now we're doing matte, matte to start the row. Okay, so I'm going to pick up my matte titanium gray, pick up one bead. I'll pass through, pick up a second bead, and close this jump ring. Okay, so now I was talking about the fact that we want to look at row 1. My hinge is over on this left-hand side. So when I do row 3, I want the hinge to be over on this right-hand side. So let's get our green. And you notice I laid out those next 2 rows for myself ahead of time. Okay, so I'm going to pass through the bead, and I'm going to pass through the previous rings of the last row that I did. Okay, so now you can see if I look at rows 1 and 3, 1 is hinged over here and 3 is hinged over here. Okay, now I'm going to pick up my matte seafoam again. So I want matte seafoam, blue, gray. Now I'm back to matte seafoam again. Okay, I'm going to pass through. Oh, oops. I'm going to pass through, pick up a second bead, and close. Okay, and then I'm looking not back at this last row. See, this is running vertical. Mine's sitting horizontal. I'm going to look 2 rows back right here. And I noticed that this is hinged on the left-hand side for me right now, the way I'm looking at it. So I want to hinge this on the right-hand side. Okay, so I'll get my shiny green. And pass through, making sure that's on the correct side. Okay. So you can see we've got several things going on here. This would be a very simple weave had it not been for the fact that we want to alternate the first ring in each row. Okay, so I'm going to lay out my next 2 rows again. So that's got the greens. I'm going to lay the beads next to these, so I know that these are the ones that I'm going to pick up first. Okay, and we were on seafoam. That was the last color that we picked up. So we want to go to blue and matte titanium gray for the next 2 rows. Okay, I'm just going to do those rows. And hopefully by this point, you kind of have it. You know, just the fact that there's 3 things going on. There's a distinct weave, which is this alternating the hinges back and forth. You know, we've got a 2x2 chain, but by using the beads, we're creating a little bit more interest by alternating the beads back and forth. We're alternating which color ring holds the beads. So that's our, you know, 2 shiny green, then we're going to do our 2 secondary colors, 2 shiny green, 2 secondary colors. And then we also have this seafoam blue and titanium gray alternating in 3s passing through the pattern. So that's what makes it a little bit more challenging. But if you want to create interesting chains, okay, so we're looking at this one here. This is 2 rows back, and my hinge is on the left now. It's just the way it's sitting too, so don't get too wrapped up in this left and right thing that I'm talking about. It's just a matter of it being on the opposite side. But as I'm working along here, in the written tutorial, what I did was I made sure for every step that I did that the lobster clasp is facing the same direction. So it's facing out this way. But as you work, you know, if you get it turned over, then left may be right and right might be left. So, so if you need it to stay stationary because you're having a hard time understanding, then this is the way to kind of mark yourself and make sure that everything's facing the same direction as you go along. But otherwise, you know, just look at, you know, we're mimicking this row to the one that's 2 rows back. In this row, we looked at 2 rows back to see where our hinge was going to be and to make sure we're alternating which side that hinge is on. Okay, so our next green, and this is going to be the last step that I show you, and I hope you will be ready to just move forward. Okay, so see my hinge is over here on this side, so when I pick up this matte titanium, I'm going to go ahead and put it on this opposite side and close the ring. Okay. So that was our gray, and now we will be back to having the secondary rings in the center. So these will be our next 2 colors. Just keep laying out the next 2 rows. It's easiest this way, and then you know where you're going with each step. Okay, so that'll be the next 2 rows. So just go ahead and finish the length of this. I do have a finished one here. Okay, so I'm just going to show you when you get to the end, all I want you to do is, you know, just lock it into place just like we did at the start. This is using the smallest ring that's in with your lobster clasp. And then the ring that's just a little bit larger that's in that is going to be the one that we put on the end. And we do that. I just wanted a slightly larger ring. You could stay with this smallest one, but I just thought it was easier because when you're putting on your jewelry, this is going to hook through the lobster clasp real easy. So this is all there is to it. Alternating rings, bracelet chain. This can be done in other sizes, but again, what you want to look for when you're designing your own version of this is just the fact that you can fit 2 jump rings through the beads that you're using in this chain. I hope you enjoyed this project. Thanks so much for joining me, and please like and follow me on YouTube, and I hope you'll join me for another project soon. Thanks so much.